Hi guys, I want to show you something fascinating, and I think this is going to revolutionize the internet and change how people do business, and in some ways it's going to change many people's lives. It's called ChatGPT. It's what's called an AI bot, so an artificial intelligence bot or chatbot. What you do is you can put in a phrase and it will respond with an answer. You can use it to write a story, to write an email, to write a report. It can provide you information and on pretty much anything. It's limited that it only goes up to the year 2021. But it's an amazing tool, and I think it's going to change how it's going to change many people's lives. Now, let me get into the point here. So what I did was I put into the chatbot a scenario. If the UK had voted the opposite way in 2016, what did the AI come up with? What would Britain look like today? So I just did a quick short story on this. So I asked it to write me a 500-word story about a future where the UK voted to remain within the EU in the 2016 Brexit referendum. And the response is quite interesting. So it says here, in a future where the UK voted to remain within the EU in the 2016 Brexit referendum, the country had a sense of relief and optimism, which is interesting because it's the opposite of what we're seeing today. The decision had been a close one, but it had been enough to set the country on a path towards continued cooperation and partnership with its European counterparts. This is interesting as well because, as we saw in the real vote in 2016, it was a close call. And in this scenario, it would have been a close call too. So once again, I don't know how the bot is coming up with this information. We don't know the workings behind the scenes, but it's probably using information it already has to come to the conclusion that the vote would have been a close one. It goes on to say the UK had remained an active member of the EU, working closely with its European partners to tackle issues such as climate change, immigration and terrorism. And these were issues that were brought up at the time. Climate change less to a lesser extent, but there was this issue of, we need to work with the European Union on issues like immigration and terrorism. The country had maintained its access to the single market and the customs union, ensuring that businesses could continue to invest and thrive. The opposite of what we're seeing today. Businesses are not thriving and investment has dropped. For many, the decision to remain had been a vote for stability and unity. The country had avoided the divisions that had torn apart other European nations and had instead chosen to embrace its place within the European community. This is something that I think was possible at the time, that if the UK had voted to remain, it would have been interesting to see how other countries would have reacted, because there was this hope within Brexit supporting or anti-EU supporters around Europe that if the UK left and succeeded, this would give a massive boost to their campaigns to leave the European Union, be them in Italy or France, Germany, wherever. So the UK in a sense avoided that ballot. It goes on to say, as the years went by, the decision to remain had become increasingly popular. Polls showed that the majority of the UK population now supported the decision to remain, and that many of those who had originally voted to leave had changed their minds. I don't know if that would have actually happened. People like Nigel Farage and others would have continued to say that, the reason we're having these problems is because we stayed in the EU. So I don't know if, the Leave vote message was very popular and very powerful. So I don't know if I would agree with the bot on this. It goes on to say the UK had become had become a leading voice in the fight against climate change, with the government implementing policies to reduce carbon emissions and investing in renewable energy. The country had also worked closely with its European partners to address issues such as immigration, supporting efforts to provide aid and support to refugees fleeing war and persecution. It's interesting because you probably wouldn't have ended up with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, so it's possible that Labour could have won the election in 2017, or in whatever came after, maybe not 2019, but we would have been seeing, the UK would have been in a very different position. And it's possible you could have had Keir Starmer as Prime Minister at some stage, or maybe another Tory, but not someone like Boris Johnson. Yes, that's very interesting. As the UK continued to work with its European partners, it was clear that the decision to remain had been the right one. The country had avoided the uncertainty and chaos that had plagued its European neighbours, and had instead chosen a path towards stability and unity. So it keeps repeating that point. The decision to remain within the EU had not been without its challenges. There had been disagreements and debates, but the country had come together to find common ground and work towards a shared future. Once again, I think that probably wouldn't have been the case, because you had people like Nigel Farage and Jacob Rees-Mogg. Would their voice, would their influence have diminished if the UK had voted to remain, or would they have become much more vocal? As we saw with Brexit, they became extremely vocal, so it's possible the opposite could have happened. And then at the end it says, in the end, the decision to remain had brought the UK closer to its European neighbours, strengthened ties and building a sense of community. It had been a decision that had set the country on a path towards a brighter and more prosperous future. So the sunlit uplands did exist, but it required the UK to vote to remain. And that's it. So that was just an example of the abilities of this bot. I'm not really talking so much about the Brexit vote here, but this is more about ChatGPT. You can put in anything here, and I recommend you play around with this tool. It's amazing. I've heard stories about lawyers writing documents using it, people who have no programming experience, asking it to write an app, write code for an app, or write code for a website. And it's been expanded also into creating images. If you search on the internet AI images, you'll find amazing artwork that was created using artificial intelligence, but just using prompts. So something like dog sitting next to a tree, put that into an image generator, and it will actually create artwork for you. And you can decide whether it's the style of art as well. I think this tool is going to completely change how we live. It's going to make life easier for many people, and it could actually render some jobs obsolete. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.